reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam because we have nothing better to do. And we're at the third canto, chapter 25, the Glories of Devotional Service. And we're taking up
Text 17.
at text 17 according to our atomic clock. At the time the soul can see himself to be transcendental to material existence. At that time, the soul can see himself to be transcendental to material existence and always self-effulgent, never fragmented, although very minute in size. Purport. In the state of pure consciousness, or Krishna consciousness, one can see himself as a minute particle, non-different from the Supreme Lord. In the state of pure consciousness, or Krishna consciousness, one can see himself as a minute particle, non-different from the Supreme Lord. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, the jiva, or individual soul, is eternally part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Just as the sun rays are minute particles of the brilliant constitution of the sun, so a living entity is a minute particle of the Supreme Spirit. The individual soul and the Supreme Lord are not separated as in material differentiation. The individual soul is a particle from the very beginning. But one should not think that because the individual soul is a particle, it is fragmented from the whole spirit. Mayavad philosophy enunciates that the whole spirit exists, but a part of it, which is called the jiva, is entrapped by illusion. This philosophy, however, is unacceptable because spirit cannot be divided like a fragment of matter. The part, the jiva, is eternally a part. As long as the Supreme Spirit exists, his part and parcel also exist. As long as the sun exists, the molecules of the sun's rays also exist. The jiva particle is estimated in the Vedic literature to be 1/10,000th the size of the upper portion of a hair. It is therefore infinitesimal. The Supreme Spirit is infinite, but the living entity or the individual soul is infinitesimal, although it is not different in quality from the Supreme Spirit. Two words in this verse are to be particularly noted. One is nirantaram, which means not different, or of the same quality. The individual soul is also expressed here as animanam. Animanam means infinitesimal. The Supreme Spirit is all-pervading, but the very small spirit is the individual soul. Akanditam means not exactly fragmented, but constitutionally always infinitesimal. No one can separate the molecular parts of the sunshine from the sun, but at the same time, the molecular part of the sunshine is not as expansive as the sun itself. Similarly, the living entity, by his constitutional position, is qualitatively the same as the Supreme Spirit, but he is infinitesimal. 18. In that position of self-realization by practice of knowledge and renunciation in devotional service, one sees everything in the right perspective. He becomes indifferent to material existence, and the material influence acts less powerfully upon him. Purport. As the contamination of the germs of a particular disease can influence a weaker person, similarly the influence of material nature or illusory energy can act on the weaker or conditioned soul, but not on the liberated soul. Self-realization is the position of the liberated state. One understands his constitutional position by knowledge and vairagya, renunciation. Without knowledge, one cannot have realization. The realization that one is the infinitesimal part and parcel of the Supreme Spirit makes him unattached to material, conditional life. That is the beginning of devotional service. Unless one is liberated from material contamination, one cannot engage himself in the devotional service of the Lord. In this verse, therefore, it is stated, Jnana Vairagya Yuktena. When one is in full knowledge of one's constitutional position and is, in the renounced order of life, detached from material attraction, then by pure devotional service, bhakti yuktena, he can engage himself as a loving servant of the Lord. Paripashyati means that he can see everything in its right perspective. Then the influence of material nature becomes almost nil. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Brahmabhuta prasanatma. When one is self-realized, he becomes happy and free from the influence of material nature, and at that time he is freed from lamentation and hankering. The Lord states that position as Mad Bhaktim Labhate Puram, the real state of beginning devotional service. Similarly, it is confirmed in the Narada Pancharatra that when the senses are purified, they can then be engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. One who is attached to material contamination cannot be a devotee. Perfection in self-realization cannot be attained by any kind of yogi unless he engages in devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for that is the only auspicious path. That knowledge and renunciation are never perfect unless joined by devotional service, is explicitly explained here. Na yujamanaya means without being dovetailed. When there is devotional service, then the question is where to offer that service. Devotional service is to be offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the super soul of everything, for that is the only reliable path of self-realization, or Brahman realization. The word Brahmasiddhaye means to understand oneself to be different from matter, to understand oneself to be Brahman. The Vedic words are Aham Brahmasmi. Brahmasiddhi means that one should know that he is not matter. He is pure soul. They are attached to something. We see that if someone has no object of attachment, if he has no children, then he transfers his attachment to cats and dogs. This indicates that propensity for attachment cannot be stopped. It must be utilized for the best purpose. Our attachment for material things perpetuates our conditional state, but the same attachment, when transferred to the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his devotee, is the source of liberation. Here, it is recommended that attachment should be transferred to the self-realized devotees, the sadhus. And who is a sadhu? A sadhu is not just an ordinary man with a saffron robe and a long beard. A sadhu is described in Bhagavad Gita as one who unflinchingly engages in devotional service, even though one is found not to be following the strict rules and regulations of devotional service. If one simply has unflinching faith in Krishna, the Supreme Person, he is understood to be a sadhu. Sadhu eva samantabhya. A sadhu is a strict follower of devotional service. It is recommended here that if one at all wants to realize Brahman or spiritual perfection, his attachment should be transferred to the sadhu or devotee. Lord Chaitanya also confirmed this. Lava matra sadhu sange sarva siddhi hoy. Simply by a moment's association with a sadhu, one can attain perfection. Mahatma is a synonym of sadhu. It is said that service to a Mahatma or elevated devotee of the Lord is Dwara Mahura Vimukte, the royal road of liberation. Mahat Sevam Dwara Mahura Vimuktes Tamurvadam Yoshtam Sangi Sangam 552. Rendering service to the materialist has the opposite effect. If anyone offers service to a gross materialist or a person engaged only in sense enjoyment, then by association with such a person, the door to hell is open. The same principle is confirmed here. Attachment to a devotee is attachment to the service of the Lord, because if one associates with a sadhu, the result will be that the sadhu will teach him how to become a devotee, a worshipper and sincere servitor of the Lord. These are the gifts of a sadhu. If we want to associate with a sadhu, we cannot expect him to give us instructions on how to improve our material condition. But he will give us instructions on how to cut the knot of the contamination of material attraction and how to elevate ourselves in devotional service. That is the result of associating with a sadhu. Kapila Muni first of all instructs that the path of liberation begins with such association. Tikshava Korunika Surya Sarvadehinam Ajata Kshatrava Shanta Sadhava Sadhu Bhushana. The symptoms of a sadhu are that he is tolerant, merciful, and friendly to all living entities. He has no enemies, he is peaceful, he abides by the scriptures, and all his characteristics are sublime. Purport: a sadhu, as described above, is a devotee of the Lord. His concern, therefore, is to enlighten people in devotional service to the Lord. That is his mercy. He knows that without devotional service to the Lord, human life is spoiled. A devotee travels all over the country from door to door, preaching, be Krishna conscious, be a devotee of Lord Krishna. Don't spoil your life in simply fulfilling your animal propensities. Human life is meant for self-realization or Krishna consciousness. These are the preachings of a sadhu. He is not satisfied with his own liberation. He always thinks about others. He is the most compassionate personality towards all the fallen souls. One of his qualifications, therefore, is karunika, great mercy to the fallen souls. While engaged in preaching work, he has to meet with so many opposing elements, and therefore the sadhu, or devotee of the Lord, has to be very tolerant. Someone may ill-treat him because the conditioned souls are not prepared to receive the transcendental knowledge of devotional service. They do not like it. That is their disease. The sadhu has the thankless task of impressing upon them the importance of devotional service. Sometimes devotees are personally attacked with violence. Lord Jesus Christ was crucified. Haridas Thakur was caned in 22 marketplaces, and Lord Chaitanya's principal assistant, Nityananda, was violently attacked by Jagai and Madai. But still they were tolerant because their mission was to deliver the fallen souls. One of the qualifications of a sadhu is that he is very tolerant and is merciful to all fallen souls. He is merciful because he is the well-wisher of all living entities. He is not only a well-wisher of human society, but a well-wisher of animal society as well. It is said here, sarvadehinam, which indicates all living entities who have accepted material bodies. Not only does the human being have a material body, but other living entities such as cats and dogs also have material bodies. The devotee of the Lord is merciful to everyone, the cats, dogs, trees, etc. He treats all living entities in such a way that they can ultimately get salvation from this material entanglement. Srivananda Sain, one of the disciples of Lord Chaitanya, gave liberation to a dog by treating the dog transcendentally. There are many instances where a dog got salvation by association with a sadhu, because a sadhu engages in the highest philanthropic activities for the benediction of all living entities. Yet, although a sadhu is not inimical towards anyone, the world is so ungrateful that even a sadhu has many enemies. What is the difference between an enemy and a friend? It is a difference in behavior. A sadhu behaves with all conditioned souls for their ultimate relief from material entanglement. Therefore, no one can be more friendly than a sadhu in relieving a conditioned soul. A sadhu is calm, and he quietly and peacefully follows the principles of Scripture. A sadhu means one who follows the principles of Scripture, that at the same time is a devotee of the Lord. One who actually follows the principles of Scripture must be a devotee of God, because all the Shastras instruct us to obey the orders of the Personality of Godhead. Sadhu, therefore, means a follower of the scriptural injunctions and a devotee of the Lord. All these characteristics are prominent in a devotee. A devotee develops all the good qualities of the demigods, whereas a non-devotee, even though academically qualified, has no actual good qualifications or good characteristics according to the standard of transcendental realization. (22) Such a sadhu engages in staunch devotional service to the Lord without deviation. For the sake of the Lord, he renounces all other connections, such as family relationships and friendly acquaintances within the world. Purport: a person in the renounced order of life A sannyasi is also called a sadhu because he renounces everything, his home, his comfort, his friends, his relatives, and his duties to friends and to family. He renounces everything for the sake of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A sannyasi is generally in the renounced order of life, but his renunciation will be successful only when his energy is employed in the service of the Lord with great austerity. It is said here, therefore, bhaktim kurvanti ye dridham. A person who seriously engages in the service of the Lord and is in the renounced order of life is a sadhu. A sadhu is one who has given up all responsibility to society, family, and worldly humanitarianism, simply for the service of the Lord. As soon as he takes his birth in the world, a person has so many responsibilities and obligations to the public, to the demigods, to the great sages, to the general living beings, to his parents, to the family forefathers, and to many others. When he gives up all such obligations for the sake of the service of the Supreme Lord, he is not punished for such renunciation of obligation. But if for sense gratification a person renounces all such obligations, he is punished by the law of nature. Engaged constantly in chanting and hearing about me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the sadhus do not suffer from material miseries because they are always filled with thoughts of my pastimes and activities. There are multifarious miseries in material existence, those pertaining to the body and the mind, those imposed by other living entities, and those imposed by natural disturbances. But a sadhu is not disturbed by such miserable conditions, because his mind is always filled with Krishna consciousness, and thus he does not like to talk about anything but the activities of the Lord. Maharaj Ambarish did not speak of anything but the pastimes of the Lord. Vachamshi Vaikuntha Gunarda Varnane 9:4-18. He engaged his words only in glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sadhus are always interested in hearing about the activities of the Lord or his devotees. Since they are filled with Krishna consciousness, they are forgetful of the material miseries. Ordinary conditioned souls, being forgetful of the activities of the Lord, are always full of anxieties and material tribulations. On the other hand, since the devotees always engage in the topics of the Lord, they are forgetful of the miseries of material existence. O my mother, O virtuous lady, these are the qualities of great devotees who are free from all attachment. You must seek attachment to such holy men, for this counteracts the pernicious effects of material attachment. Kapila Muni herein advises his mother, Devahuti, that if she wants to be free from material attachment, she should increase her attachment for the sadhus, or devotees, who are completely freed from all material attachment. In Bhagavad Gita 15th chapter, verse 5, it is stated, who is qualified to enter the kingdom of Godhead? It is said there, Nirmana Moha Chittasanga Dosha. This refers to one who is completely freed from the puffed up condition of material possessiveness. A person may be materially very rich, opulent, or respectable, but if he at all wants to transfer himself to the spiritual kingdom, back home, back to Godhead, then he has to be freed from the puffed up condition of material possessiveness, because that is a false position. The word moha used here means the false understanding that one is rich or poor. In this material world, the conception that one is very rich or very poor, or any such consciousness in connection with material existence, is false, because this body itself is false or temporary. A pure soul who is prepared to be freed from this material entanglement must first of all be freed from the association of the three modes of nature. Our consciousness at the present moment is polluted because of association with the three modes of nature. Therefore, in Bhagavad Gita, the same principle is stated. It is advised, Citta Sangha Dosha. One should be freed from the contaminated association of the three modes of material nature. Here also in the Srimad Bhagavatam, this is confirmed. A pure devotee who is preparing to transfer himself to the spiritual kingdom is also freed from the association of the three modes of material nature. We have to seek the association with such devotees. For this reason, we have begun the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. There are many mercantile, scientific, and other associations in human society to develop a particular type of education or consciousness, but there is no association which helps one get free from all material association. If anyone has reached the stage where he must become free from this material contamination, then he has to seek the association of devotees, wherein Krishna consciousness is exclusively cultured. One can thereby become free from all material association. Because a devotee is freed from all contaminated material association, he is not affected by the miseries of material existence. Even though he appears to be in the material world, he is not affected by the miseries of the material world. How is it possible? There is a very good example in the activities of the cat. The cat carries her kittens in her mouth, and when she kills a rat, she also carries the booty in her mouth. Thus, both are carried in the mouth of the cat, but they are in different conditions. The kitten feels comfort in the mouth of the mother, whereas when the rat is carried in the mouth of the cat, the rat feels the blows of death. Similarly, those who are sadhava, or devotees, engaged in Krishna consciousness, in the transcendental service of the Lord, do not feel the contamination of material miseries. Whereas those who are not devotees in Krishna consciousness actually feel the miseries of material existence. One should therefore give up association of materialistic persons and seek the association of persons engaged in Krishna consciousness. And by such association he will benefit in spiritual advancement. By their words and instructions, he will be able to cut off his attachment to material existence. Now we'll take a few reflections. Thought about the Prabhus first. And then it looks like Damodar Brahmsudari has his hand up. No, he doesn't, but Dave Prabhu has an inquiry look on his face. Something is going, and we got a definite from our Avadut. I'm looking outside. Nothing. Oh, Sarva and who's it blocking there? Okay, we got a few in the outside. Let's go.
I have a question that in text 20 it says that even though one is found not to be following the strict rules and regulations of devotional service, if one simply has unflinching faith in Krishna, the Supreme Person, is understood to be a sadhu. And it says that a sadhu is a strict follower of devotional service, which may appear contradictory. And to add to that, another sentence in verse 21 in the purport Prabhupada says, sadhu therefore means a follower of the scriptural injunctions and a devotee of the Lord.
Prabhupada gives the way to understand that in verse 331 in the Gita, which most of you know is Ye me matam idam nityam anutishkanti manava shradhavantam suyantam muchante te pramadi. Those persons who execute their duties according to my injunctions and who follow this teaching faithfully without envy become free from the bondage of fruitive actions. Purport: the injunction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna is the essence of all Vedic wisdom, and therefore is eternally true without exception. As the Vedas are eternal, so this truth of Krishna consciousness is also eternal. One should have firm faith in this injunction without envying the Lord. There are many philosophers who write comments on the Bhagavad Gita but have no faith in Krishna. They will never be liberated from the bondage of fruitive action. But an ordinary man with firm faith in the eternal injunctions of the Lord, even though unable to execute such orders, becomes liberated from the bondage of the law of karma. In the beginning of Krishna consciousness, one may not fully discharge the injunctions of the Lord, but because one is not resentful of this principle and works sincerely without consideration of defeat and hopelessness, he will surely be promoted to the stage of pure Krishna consciousness.
Om Tat Sat.
Case closed.
Thanks a lot. There you have it. Who's next?
Kude. He was ceding his to the gentleman from Vermont.
320. But 331?
331.
Mine's really short. I just really like this sentence. Devotional service itself is so powerful that by one's service attitude, everything is revealed.
Yeah.
You take that to the bank.
Yeah.
Anybody else inside here? Oh, yes. Pass it back to the Abhidut.
In the text to Tishava Kurunika, Prabhupada mentions Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. And I've heard you mention that one of Lord Nityananda's qualities is adosha darshi, that he doesn't see any faults. So I was wondering if you could elaborate on this quality of Lord Nityananda.
Yeah. One of the ways in which the Shastras define the quality of a person's consciousness is their level of criticism. And we know, of course, the general statement, Nindadi Shunya Hrinavipyasya Sangalabhya. Nindadi Shunya means if somebody's Shunya of Ninda, they just don't, it doesn't occur to them. They're on the topmost platform. So then there's this commentary by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur when he describes how, as far as the asadhus go, there's 3 levels. One is that a person sees a fault and then mentions it. The other one, there's... You have it here? We have it. Give me damn. You again. Commentary from the Sarta Darshini, a 4-4-12 for those of you who are keeping score at home. 1, Mahat, great person. A Mahat has the ability to see some good in everyone. They also perceive faults in others, but they consider that those faults can be eventually transformed by certain methods into good qualities. Thus, if they feel that a person may be benefited by discussing that person's faults, they may, under appropriate circumstances, speak harsh words. 2, Mahatara. And Mahatara also sees good and bad qualities in others, but focuses on and praises the good qualities. 3, Mahatama. And Mahatama sees whatever good qualities others have and magnifies them, not seeing even the smallest fault. The Ati Mahatama sees good qualities in others even when there are none.
Wow.
And then you get to the asadhus. And the sadhu sees some good qualities in others, but presumes that eventually these good qualities will be overshadowed and spoiled by some fault. The example given is that he says, oh, he gives a lot of charity. Yeah, but probably he'll get attached to the fame and he'll probably start keeping it for himself. Asudattara. It's even more improper. He or she sees only faults in others and overlooks their good qualities. And then asadutama. Asadutama takes small faults and magnifies them, seeing no good qualities at all. And the ati asasudatmana sees faults in others even when there are no faults. One of the ways in which he describes the person who, he describes a householder gets robbed at gunpoint, at knife point, and then first absconds with the loot, and afterwards the householder praises him. He says, "He's a very pious man. First of all, he must have been very hungry to have to steal from us. Second of all, he could have harmed us, but he didn't. What a great soul." Let me see, it was just preliminary, and you were asking about?
It was nice, yeah. Dosha
No, but-
Darshi.
Dosha Darshi, yeah. So, okay, well anyway, that was something.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We're going outside right after this.
Just riding the wave of this conversation. When I was visiting Radhika Raman, one evening we sat, and the week before that they had installed the samadhi of Gopal Krishna Maharaj in Boise, which was like a Tadiya samadhi, and Anantarupa Prabhu produced a book of memories of devotees with Gopal Krishna Maharaj in Boise, so there was a good sized book. And so Radhika Raman and I were reading some of that, and then he was just sharing his own memories, and he was saying how devotees would come to Maharaj and they would be complaining about a particular person, and then he would say, yeah, but they're engaging in service, right? And they'd say, yes, Maharaj. And he'd say, just tolerate. So I mean, it's one thing to hear about it in Shastra, but then to hear about a living example of it, like Gopal Krishna Maharaj, it really goes deep into the heart.
Yeah. We're coming back. I promised the outsiders. What? They're going to go and then we come right back to you. Divyanga, you're up, I think. You will get.
Upadeshamrita, the preface, one sentence. Advancement in Krishna consciousness depends on the attitude of the follower.
Thanks, Dave.
Hare Krishna.
Yadutama, go ahead.
One of the qualities that struck me the most of the sadhu is this karunika. I read this. He is not satisfied with his own liberation. He always thinks about others. He is the most compassionate personality toward all the fallen souls. Therefore, one of his qualifications is karunika, great mercy to the fallen souls. So I was thinking about this, and maybe from a personal point of view, I came to Krishna consciousness for myself. So my question is, how does this kind of desire to put on my own life jacket and do it for myself turn into compassion? At what point does it evolve into thinking about others? Because on the level I'm on, I'm definitely not thinking about others all the time. So how does it evolve? At what point does it evolve? Is it a gradual process?
It evolves when you start noticing that you empathize with people who are suffering. Atma pamyena sarvatra samam pashati orjuna sukham vayaribha becomes a yogi paramomata. Krishna says you cross over into the parama yogi category, the highest type of yogi, when atma pamyena means empathy. M means in, pathy means to feel. When you feel what's inside of others, and it makes a difference to you, that it doesn't sit well with you, that other people have to suffer. And then how do you pass into that level of consciousness? Is that what you're asking? Or what does it feel like? How do you pass into that? Yes.
Yes.
So generally by association with people who have such empathy. And most of those devotees who have joined the Krishna consciousness movement and have that mood have inherited it from our Guru Parampara. I was not acquainted with the concept of Paradukha Dukhi. When I joined the Krishna conscious movement, I heard about that. You should suffer because of the suffering of others. And it rubs off. Kuruna Sagar. And then we'll go to Sarv.
Which verse?
We'll go to Mahendra.
Which verse was that?
321, 325.
Atma pamye sarvatra samam pashati orjuna. It's in the 6th chapter.
I just like the example they gave in the purport to text 24, that even though the cat and the kitten and the rat are both in the mouth of the cat, the kitten doesn't feel pain, but the rat feels pain, even though they're in the same
That one
part
got
of the
me
mouth.
too. I guess you suddenly thinking of what it feels like to be a rat in somebody's cat's mouth. I feel so helpless. It's very scary. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Okay, let's see, we got Sarva.
Hello?
32.
Okay.
We got you.
There's two things. There's a quote by Tolstoy. It says, if you feel pain, you're alive. If you feel other people's pain, you're human. Isn't it? also, I wish I had the reference when Prabhupada says, if you're trying to make spiritual advancement and irrespective or not in relationship with the International Society of Krishna Consciousness, you're living in an hallucination.
Wow. Thanks, Sarva. Really nicely done. Mahendra.
Thank you. Something related to the question of devotees' quality as Kṛṣṇa. Something that struck me, Prabhupada said that the devotee always thinks about others, and he gave the example of Shivananda Sen who saved the dog. And I'm just thinking about, Prabhupada said that he treated the dog transcendentally, and we know he was cared about the dog and kept it close and gave food, of course, prasadam. But how we know also Srila Prabhupada sometimes he dealt with, for example, the gardener and John Lennon's estate, just talking seemingly about mundane things.
Said what?
Seemingly talking about mundane topics. So how to actually deal with others and showing compassion, how to deal with them transcendentally? Could you elaborate on that statement of Prabhupada?
How to deal with people transcendentally?
Yeah, so that you show compassion.
Well, in the case of Prabhupada, when he was talking to people in any circumstance, he had a sense for what their temperament was, and he was bringing them closer. As an example, when he talked to devotees' parents, he had a way of charming them. He didn't just he was charming with them because he knew the art of how to bring people closer. Prabhupada was a book distributor. He was the first one, actually. And he knew how to approach people in any circumstance and disarm them so that he could give them Krishna consciousness. And sometimes that disarmament may seem, if you just come out of context, if you don't have the context, you might think, oh, this person's just talking normal stuff. What kind of preaching is this? You should be, you should be telling them they're in Maya or something like that. But it's compassionate to know at what level people can be disarmed so that they can join the Sankirtan party. And if somebody sees, the idea is that the devotee is enjoying the association of Krishna so much, and the devotees, and he sees another living being, he's thinking, why can't this person join too? And if he sees the slightest inclination in the person or animal that, yeah, this looks good, then he immediately wants to fan the spark of that living entity and bring him in. It reminds me, gives sort of a metaphor-like possibility here. In Japan, there's a culture where you don't look at people. You're not supposed to look people in the eye there, and you don't make eye contact. It's considered impolite. And so when the devotees have Harinam, they wait till as the crowds are going by, they wait till somebody makes eye contact, and then they know the person just gave tacit permission to approach them, and they don't go away, because if they gave eye contact, they know that they gave permission. So I gave that example because there's a way in which a Vaishnava is always looking for that. It's just scanning everywhere. If somebody looks at it, pull over the car, that guy's, they looked at us. So they always have that sense of they want to bring somebody closer. So with the dog, King Shivananda saying, it becomes a joyful kind of situation that somebody's joining. Havi?
Thank you, Maharaj. There's one thing that struck me very strongly at the time that I heard the conversation between Srila Prabhupada and George Harrison, John Lennon, and Yoko Ono, was that sense of compassion, where he could see the limitations that they had, even though they exceeded themselves in the way they spoke to him, because they were questioning his Bhagavad Gita is just one version, there are so many versions and so on. And it came a point where they couldn't understand much who they had in front. And Prabhupada said that there's music in the spiritual world. Remember that?
Yeah.
There's music in the spiritual world. And he said, Matina Kṛṣṇa parato satova vito vipadyeta grihavratanam adanta gobir visai. I think, and please don't take my word for it, but I think at that time, that part of the Bhagavatam was not printed. And therefore, we didn't know what he was singing about. So then, for me, it was quite a discovery. Matyana Kṛṣṇa parato satova vito vipadyeta grihavratanam. Because they couldn't understand, but still he could see how the grihavrata they had. That I am this body, I have a vow. Sorry, Sadhuji, I am a ordinary musician. But Prabhupada still was so kind to them. And there was no psychological games.
Yeah, and that's just such a nice point you make, Abhi. For when, what's more, he realized, they may be able to connect on a more visceral level, talking about music and him singing and so forth. So whatever way one could attract the person. Was there somebody else in the outside people's party that we missed? Okay, yes.
Hare Krishna. So in verse 21, we hear that it said that the sadhava is someone who follows the instructions of the scriptures. And Prabhupada almost says it like 3-4 times in the purport. And then in 24, obviously, Kapila Muni is telling his own mother to gain attachment to other holy men. And it seems like that would be a little bit contradictory to scriptural injunction about men and women's attachment externally. What would that look like?
It would look like when Prabhupada first came to the West and both men and women became attached to it. Like you can see how Prabhupada invited the devotees in a very intimate way to come closer to him. He was a grandfatherly figure for them, and they respected him as that type of figure, but also as their spiritual leader. And he showed affection, but it was completely transcendental. And so, if you're in a man's body, woman's body, if there's a sadhu, then that kind of attachment is wanted. And it's very different from the kind of attachment that causes bondage in the material world. In fact, it's the opposite. And that's one of the main points that's being made here, is that it may sound like the same thing, become attached to a person, but when it's applied materialistically or for a reason that's self-serving, then it becomes a cause of bondage. But when one becomes attached to a sadhu, then one becomes liberated, whether one's a man or a woman, it doesn't matter. Somebody else had their hand up. Is that Kishori?
Yes.
Welcome, thanks for coming over. Did you bring all your people? Huh?
The mic is
I'm her mother.
Oh, your mother's here. Hare Krishna, Radhakund, Dāsa. Nice to have. I felt some special spiritual power. I couldn't tell where it was coming from. I couldn't see it. Thanks for coming. Hare Krishna.
This is embarrassing. Anyway, thank you so much, Prabhuji, for doing all this. I was thinking, I don't have much compassion for suffering souls, but I go for book distribution every day just because Srila Prabhupada told us to.
Sure. And you can't have any more fun than that, right? I remember I mean, the thing is, it probably really, yeah, please go ahead.
I was just thinking that because of Prabhupada, we're able to show compassion to suffering souls. One Mataji, she came and she said, I met you 20 years ago, do you remember me? And of course I just lied and said, yes, I remember you. She said, I was going to commit suicide, but you spoke to me, you gave me a book, and I'm still alive today.
Wow.
So this is Prabhupada's mercy, we're helping suffering souls.
Well, I think back to before I knew what devotees were exactly, and I was just getting attracted to them. And I'd see them in different places, at concerts, or doing Harinam Sankirtan downtown. And I thought of them as the most saintly, merciful types of people on the planet, because they were, and still are, because they're representatives of the Guru Parampara, which opens the channel for anyone to go back home, back to Godhead. And it can be the most seemingly insignificant devotee who goes even just into public and somebody sees him or her and then feels attracted. Oh, there's a spiritual person. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta told his Matvasis that every day they should go out and knock on at least 3 doors. And he said, don't mind if they don't take the book or they don't open the door. He said they'll still think, oh, a saintly person came here, and it'll leave an impression with them. So we may not know how much effect we're having on people, as you're pointing out. 20 years later, you find out. What to speak of, you've talked to millions of people throughout your lifetime. I have this theory that at the time when we leave this world, everybody we ever met will flash before our eyes. Okay. Yes, Manva.
This is from Atulya, Harinam Prabhu, and Vrindavan Vilasini Mataji.
Wow. Nice. I wonder where they are. Or maybe down in South India by now. They're in Hyderabad. Well, thanks for staying connected.
Hare Kṛṣṇa, our beloved Guru Maharaj, please accept our obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to all blissful assembled devotees. We like the 20th verse and purport. Attachment cannot be killed, it has simply to be transferred. Attachment for material things is called material consciousness. An attachment for Krishna or his devotees is called Krishna consciousness. Consciousness is therefore the platform of attachment. It is clearly stated here that when we simply purify the consciousness from material consciousness to Krishna consciousness, we attain liberation. Attachment cannot be stopped. It must be utilized for the best purpose. Our attachment for material things perpetuates our conditional state, but the same attachment, when transferred to the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his devotee, is the source of liberation. Sometimes people on the streets become very much attached to devotees in few minutes, that they do not want to leave the place.
Thank you for excerpting that and for reminding us how important it is to mix it up with people of the world, to give them a chance to become attached to devotees. Otherwise, what opportunity will they have? This brings us to the cow break. We will be back here at 5:15. Feel free to take a break and join us back here in about 13 minutes. Gaur Premanande Hari Bol.